I can't see now. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Hello, Cynthia.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, hello, Cynthia.
Are we ready, Julie?
Hey, I'm not sure who. Nice, bright. Brad Sokash, you have a nice jacket.
We are live.
Oh, sure.
Okay. All right, everybody, we're going to get this meeting going. It is now 2 minutes after 2 o'clock on April 9th, 2020. This is obviously a very unusual format that we're dealing with here, and I hope everybody will be a little patient with all of us and as we go through it and discover what challenges we may or may not face. The first thing I would like to do now that I've called the meeting to order is do a land acknowledgement. We want to acknowledge that we are on the lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. They continue to care for this land. They continue to shape the township of Georgian Bay today, and we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today in guiding our decisions and actions. Okay, Megwitch, I want to also add that, you know, it's interesting, we're obviously in very interesting times with this pandemic and all the consequences it has upon us. But I think as we were acknowledging our Indigenous peoples that were here for many centuries before us, we must also remember that how they went through a number of epidemics within their communities introduced by the European visitors, and how much they must have suffered. And they had, of course, at that time, far less knowledge than we do now as to what they were going through, but they nonetheless suffered the severe consequences. With that, I also want to tell a little story before we go. A couple of days ago, a good family friend passed away. And what I think is very interesting about Helen is she passed away while at hospice. And, you know, it's kind of strange going to hospice, not allowed to visit in the last few weeks, and then being outside, standing 6 feet apart as she was taken away. What's interesting about Helen is she grew up in the Eastern European countries, and she was a preteen and a young teen during the World War II years. Spent much of her time in intern camps and things like that, and got moved around. And when I think of what she survived, I think that puts a certain perspective on what we're trying to put up with during this pandemic. And I think we have to keep that in mind, that while we're going through a lot of inconvenience, we're not, it's not like being through an actual war with bombs and bullets and people being forced into camps and things like that. And I think we have to remember, put the whole thing in that perspective. With that, does anybody wish to declare any pecuniary interests? If so, please raise your hand. I'm seeing no hands go up. And this allows me to comment on how we're going forward. I think if you wish to speak, please just put your hand up so I can see it, and I will try to acknowledge you more or less in the order I've seen the hands. But, you know, like regular council meetings, you know, I won't always get that right. And please feel free to remind me if I missed you. Next step is the adoption of our agenda. And be it resolved, the council adopts the special agenda of April 9, 2020 as circulated. All those in favor? Mr. Bocek, were you just voting, or were you?
Mr. Cooper had his hand up and I was just pointing at Mr. Cooper.
Okay, I apologize, Mr. Cooper, while I was looking at my paper. You have a comment. You have to unmute yourself.
There we go. I tried it on the screen. It doesn't work. You have to go down below.
Okay.
In any event, I just wanted to make sure that today we're going to have an opportunity to discuss things like next steps, other issues that need to be, I think, need to be discussed other than what's on the agenda today. So I guess I'm suggesting that we need a point in our agenda to have that sort of discussion.
Why don't we add after and after 5D, boat launch discussion, I think that will very readily allow some opportunity there. Let's see how the meeting goes until that point. And I think we have to be careful that we don't go too far off. Otherwise, we should probably call another meeting. But I think that that'll be the time to raise some issues.
So Peter, I'm not suggesting to add new items to the agenda other than the item of next steps in terms of the next Zoom meeting and some subjects that might be discussed at the next meeting. That's really all I'm suggesting, not to have a discussion today.
Okay, I think we can work that in quite readily.
Thank
Any
you.
other comments? Was your hand up, Mr. Sokash, or are you just adjusting your screen? Okay. With that, I'll say all those in favor of adopting the special agenda. I think I'm counting everybody. Just to confirm, anyone against? Karen, can you record that as being carried unanimously, please?
Is it not a requirement that every vote be a recorded vote given the electronic medium?
Ms. Way, can you respond to that, please?
Certainly. So it depends on how the electronic medium is being done. Some places are practicing it that way where every vote is a recorded vote. We could do it that way, but if everyone is comfortable, we can still raise our hands. And if the mayor can see everyone adequately and in current time, then we can count the votes as we normally would.
It'd be my preference that we don't do a roll call each time, but I will be very happy to have a recorded vote if anyone requests that on any particular item. And I'd also please ask all of you that if you think I'm recording something incorrectly, in other words, you want to note that you did not vote in favor of something, please speak up. Okay. Next on our agenda is verbal staff reports, amendment to the procedure bylaw to permit electronic participation, which we better do sooner, otherwise everything we've done so far doesn't count. And that is over to our clerk, Ms. Way.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as I've explained previously, we do need to update our protocols for our procedural bylaw and how this will look as we unfold in this new electronic means. This is obviously our first time and hopefully there's not too many kinks to work out. But what I would like to move forward is that we, in light of the declaration of emergency that has been declared, that we amend the procedural bylaw as per Schedule N that was outlined in the agenda package. And that will permit us to continue this meeting in electronic means and any other future meetings that we need to have under these emergency circumstances. Is there any questions to the process or the protocols?
I was about to ask that. I see Councillor Hazelton.
Sorry.
Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, this is somewhat fundamental to this whole thing. I believe that District Muskoka has not declared an emergency, and yet our township has. And I see wording in here that seems to indicate that as long as the province has declared a state of emergency, that these emergency measures could continue. I'm wondering why a state of emergency was declared for our township, and what it really provides that isn't already existing, already provided existingly through the provincial state of emergency declaration.
I'm going to turn that response over to either Ms. Gunby or Ms. Way to answer Councillor Hazelton's inquiries, please.
I'm going to leave that, yeah.
Yep, thanks. We are able to hold these electronic meetings based on the fact that the province has declared, like you stated, that is correct. We, in the press release that we issued, it was explained that it was in the best interest of our residents to declare the state of emergency, and the staff who have been working behind the scenes to maintain that everything is still operational. It doesn't mean that other municipalities are doing it right or wrong if they have or have not declared, but it also shows that it shows our residents that we are taking this seriously, and it also hopefully explains that we have to dedicate a lot of resources to this, so that is why we declared. But either way, we didn't have to in order to have this meeting. So we are good to go.
So my question really is, what characteristics, what powers or whatever are enacted, provided for by a township declaration of emergency versus a provincial state of emergency, given that our parent district municipality has chosen not to declare a state of emergency. So this is really going down a path of, why did we do it? Did we need to do it? And should we continue in this state versus relying on the state of the province and using that legislative body to continue on our electronic meetings?
Thank you, Councillor Hazelton. So just to remind everyone, this item is about amending the procedural bylaw just to maintain this meeting. And that is information that I can definitely provide in writing again to council and release it to members of the public for that clarification if anyone is still confused.
So why I think it's very important right now is we are about to consider and potentially pass or whatever an additional motion that explicitly refers to a state of emergency called by the township. And so by doing that, we are perpetuating the state of emergency in the township, which from what I've been able to read may not be important, may not be critical for doing what we're doing. And I'm concerned that we have declared something at the township level that isn't needed to allow us to do the business that we're doing. And by passing this resolution with those clauses in there, it perpetuates something that may not be needed.
Yeah.
Ms. Gumby.
Again, this resolution is about the procedural bylaw. So when we come to the resolution that you're referring to, we can likely have this conversation then.
And I'd also like to remind the councillor that whether or not the township declares an emergency is at the prerogative of the mayor, not the council. That's the way the provincial law has been written.
I hear that, and I would like to remind us all that the resolution that we are entertaining here is amendments to bylaw 2019-62, which follows, and in that it also refers to the declarations of an emergency at the township level. I also want to, I don't know if others have done the same research, but my research has shown that when the province, for example, declares a state of emergency, that they can do that, but that has to be confirmed within 72 hours by the lieutenant governor and council. So my point is really, our mayor has declared a state of emergency for our township. Our council, all of us, have had no opportunity to weigh in on this decision, to confirm the decision or to decline the decision. And so I think we are on fairly thin ice here, so to speak, on procedural accuracy as we proceed.
My response to that is going to be simply that, whether or not we have that particular whereas in there that we declared a township of Georgian Bay emergency, with or without that whereas in there, the question in front of us is whether or not we're going to change our procedures to allow this electronic meeting. The province has given us that authority, and I believe that is what should be discussed. Should we or should we not allow ourselves to have an electronic meeting? And if you're suggesting, Councillor Hazelton, that we should not be allowed to have an electronic meeting, that you're not in favor of that, then when we take the vote, you can vote against it. But I think that is the matter in front of us.
Well, one of the things that we have to be aware of is that clauses get drawn into discussions that are not relevant. And I'll draw your attention to some of the clauses that were drawn into the federal discussions with respect to compensation for people in the country, and the Liberals slid in clauses that were totally unnecessary, and the Conservatives stood up and said, no, these aren't relevant right now to achieve the objective. And so the objective that I'm hearing from both the mayor and our CAO is, all we're trying to do is get a resolution that allows us to discuss in an electronic form. But my point is, there are clauses in these resolutions that go beyond the basic what we need to do that is provided under the provincial legislation, and that is what I'm objecting to.
You're objecting to what I would call statements of fact. Ms. Way.
Sorry, Your Worship, I was just going to say the whereas clauses at the beginning of each resolution that we see here are facts that have led us to the determination of what it is we're trying to enact at this point in time. So whether we agree or disagree with the fact that a declaration was declared for Georgian Bay, that still remains that's something that has occurred. And that's one of the reasons that has led us to this electronic meeting today. Even if the province had just done it and the township hadn't, we could still continue on with this meeting, providing the fact that our procedural bylaw be amended to permit that. If it's not the will of council to continue with this electronic meeting and this motion is turned down and defeated, that is fine, and the meeting will be terminated. If it is the will of council to accept these facts that yes, the declaration was made by the province and by ourselves, which are two separate facts, and agree to continue with this electronic meeting and moves it and it's carried, then wonderful, we can carry on. So really at this point in time, I think that's what we need to focus on, is whether or not we are going to accept continuing on an electronic form for our emergency purposes.
Does anybody else wish to speak to this matter? Councillor Cooper.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I have no objection to electronic meeting. I do understand the comment coming from Councillor Hazelton with respect to the declaration of an emergency. And since it's been declared, I guess we haven't got any choice, but I think the point that's made is that there was no consultation with the council. And I think that's important to point out.
Are there anybody else? Is there anybody else who wishes to comment? With that, I don't know if you want me to read the whole motion or if you have it in front of you. I forgot to mention, and I should read out that the, well, it's now in front of you as well, that arbitrarily we put movers and seconders on these motions, and I should have confirmed that with the prior motion. The motion to adopt the agenda was moved by Councillor Bocek and seconded by Councillor Cooper. And the current motion is moved by Councillor Douglas and seconded by Councillor Hazelton. If anyone objects to their names being on the moving or seconding, please speak up and we can make the change. Unfortunately, because it's other screens on, I can't tell whether anybody's raised their hands at this point. Has anybody raised their hands? Okay, then I'm going to say all those in favor of the motion in front of us to allow electronic meetings. Now that, according to my view, that has passed unanimously. Okay, next on our agenda is changes to level of service. And we're going to hear from our CO, Ms. Gunby, and from our Director of Fire and Emergency Services, Mr. Von Dum. Ms. Gunby, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give just a quick overview of some of the examples that we're looking at. This isn't a restrictive list. Other municipalities have passed similar ones. The one I looked at most recently was Aurelia, and they've listed a few things. But I'm gonna, after that, just give it over to our fire chief to explain the specific purpose that he was looking for this for. So some examples that other people are doing are implementing a ban on garage sales. something as simple as that. Implementing any social distance regulations within our township, reducing the level of service for fire department and emergency response, which is what Tony will speak to, giving bylaw staff ability to enforce any new regulations. Maybe building staff may stop doing certain inspections due to safety concerns or future provincially recommended restrictions. So the purpose of a bylaw or a resolution for this would give the CAO and the mayor the ability to implement new restrictions or change any sort of level of service without having to call a special council meeting every time something came up. Now, if council is not in favor of this, if something came up that needed a change of level, we would have to have a special meeting almost every time, or just not take any action on certain items if we're going to have a meeting every week or every 2 weeks, or our regular meeting schedule. So Chief Van Dam, if you can provide additional information on this, please.
Thank you, Council. I just wanted to let you know the biggest thing for this in the fire services is the day-to-day changes in our operations that are happening. Currently, for example, we have ice that's melting. We've got bays that are still in ice. We've got lakes that still have ice. We can't provide the normal level of service that is out there. That is, I'm going to say, that people have expected. So we need to have that protection for the municipality. And then we have other issues that are brewing up in the tiered medical response. As you're well aware, that there's a PPE shortage within the province of Ontario. We are not immune to that. Currently today, we have enough to carry on with the response, but there could be at any given time where I need to stop the tiered medical response due to that we don't have the PPE, or there may be other legislation requirements that we will not meet coming forward. I can tell you that this conversation is happening at least 3 or 4 times a week within the district, within the province, with our neighbors. So we need that ability to be able to move from it. We also need the ability to, with our neighbors who we're providing some of our agreements to for the boats, that we need to be able to say that, yes, we can, or no, we can't. And there are days where that changes daily.
All right, thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Bocek, followed by Councillor Cooper.
My question would be directed at our CAO. In what you've just explained to us, I'll give you an example of where I feel it may not work and council's decision may be needed. For example, if we decided, or if the mayor and the CAO decided that there would be no more short-term rentals, Airbnbs, or whatever, and you're going to make that decision between the two of you without council's reflection. I think in a case like that, or instances like that, a special council meeting, it should be put on an agenda. When it comes to things like emergency services and things that don't affect us directly, I think you can go ahead and make those decisions. But I think for the most part, a lot of the decisions that are going to have to be made moving forward, council should be involved in them.
Thank you, Councillor Bocek. So that is another example that I didn't consider. We also don't have any current licensing or bylaws regarding short-term accommodations, but the resolution's worded in such that it doesn't specifically list anything. And it would be our discretion whether we take it to council or not. Again, if council does not agree to this, we would just hold everything until a meeting. But during this time, things are changing basically by the hour, and we get new information. I wake up and there's 3 new changes to laws. So sometimes things cannot wait for a council meeting, but provided this fancy Zoom technology works very well, we could hold more meetings than once a month.
Certainly, just subsequent to that, it would be nice if decisions were being made by the mayor or our CAO that didn't involve council approval, that we were informed of those decisions on a timely basis, or if not even immediately, so we have an idea and we can reflect your thoughts to our constituents.
We would definitely let you know immediately.
I believe that our clerk is providing daily updates on some of the things that have taken place. I also think that the resolution that is in front of us, it's quite specific of what it's delegating. You know, close municipal facilities, adjust service levels, cancel programs, and council and committee meetings. In other words, it's not talking about changing bylaws or restricting activities of our residents. It's more talking about what our staff is actually doing. At least that's my read of it. I mean, and then I think as a fine example of that is when the boat launch opening or closing discussion came up, it was a decision that this is something that council should weigh in on, because we know there's a range of viewpoints.
Thank you for that explanation, Mayor.
Councillor Cooper, I believe I saw your hand up.
Terribly observant.
Well, my memory is so-so.
So I think I understand the intent here. It's the reading of it that is a little bit concerning in one spot. It's under number 2, adjust service levels. I understand that cancel programs. Where I have trouble is and cancel, in other words, council and committee meetings. In effect, the way this reads, you too could cancel all our council meetings for 6 months or a year. The way I interpret this, it's so broad. So I'm just wondering, I think the intent is that if a meeting can't be held because of certain circumstances, that it would be changed, and that's understandable. But we also need to remember that right now we have a facility, we're looking at it, which is being able to get together pretty easily. And so I want to encourage that, as opposed to, we certainly don't want an autocracy. So I'm just concerned that this may read a little bit in that way. Thank you.
Well, and I certainly don't want that either. I just want to add that this is to be effective while in a state of emergency. So if we're in a state of emergency for 6 months, we will have very significant challenges in front of us, and we'll certainly have more of these meetings. Anyone else wish to comment? Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, I was going to echo that, but since Peter's already talked about it, I won't reiterate it. But I think that it is important for us in our current state to be seen as being engaged so that we can represent our communities. And I've already had feedback from people in the community who are saying, what's going on? And my response is, well, I don't know. I'm not being asked for any opinions. I haven't participated in any meetings. Things are being done at the township without any broad council decisions or discussions. And so I think it's absolutely critical to engage in these meetings. We see our provincial and our federal counterparts, in fairness, they're a lot more important than we are, and I get that, but they're having daily meetings almost all day long, and daily conference calls, or sorry, daily press releases on what's going on at both the provincial and the federal level. And we're not even having a meeting except for today. So I think that getting together and having a meeting is critical. And I also think that we have an opportunity to perhaps continue to support, for example, our fire chief, where perhaps we might want to say something like, yeah, for the time being, given the challenges of providing any fire and EMS services in the water, let's just go ahead and give our fire chief the authority to post that no services will be provided in that area, given the current challenges and our priorities. And that is something that I think I could get behind for our community. And I think that the other councillors in the Bay might also be able to get behind that. And that might be even more significant than what our fire chief might have been thinking. So engaging council at this point in time on a regular basis, even if we had to do 2 meetings a week, these things are not a big deal. We could get ourselves connected, and we could communicate and be seen as being representing our community. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to respond to that by simply saying, now that we have this system and it appears to be working, I would like to see us exercise it more often. We obviously, this wasn't available to us immediately, and I'm glad we now have it working. Councillor Rienko.
Good, you see my hand. Yeah, thanks for the fire chief for his explanations of what his group is doing. I think Jessica mentioned a minute ago that maybe the building inspectors aren't going out. I'm just wondering what other departments are not doing where they normally do, like bylaw enforcement or building inspection, so on. What are they not doing during this particular period?
It was just an example of a possibility. So it's still business as usual. People are still dropping off permits. Planner is reviewing them. Building inspections are still occurring. There's discussions about if we can continue to inspect on island properties or not. So we're still waiting for clarification on that. Bylaw is still out. There's a fire ban on, so people are calling and complaining when someone is having a fire and not being restricted to the fire ban. Taxes are still being paid, emails are still coming in, phones are still ringing. There's no department that is short of work at this time. It's business as usual. It's just a little more difficult with most people working from home.
Okay. So what I would ask for then is if people stop doing significant things like building inspections or bylaw enforcement or whatever, maybe you can give us a little note saying, yeah, these things have been stopped for this particular reason. So basically all I know is business as usual, except maybe something in the fire department, but business as usual. And when it's not usual, then maybe a note to us and saying why not, and so we can keep our constituents informed.
I'm sure that could be part of the near daily updates we're getting from our clerk. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Jessica, maybe just on that note, you brought up something about building permits and business as usual. My understanding that's quite different, that they are no longer doing inspections or submitting permits. They are taking them on board, but anyways, I don't want to go into detail with that's only one factor, but maybe you could, if at all possible, could we get some clarification on that? That's something that I have a different understanding of that. My understanding is that, yes, you are taking on applications, but there are no permits being submitted or issued, and there are no inspections. It doesn't have to be done now, but there is something that
I have an answer.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
So you're welcome. The permits are still being submitted. We won't be issuing them until the order stating that certain construction services are ordered as non-essential, but people are still submitting so that when that order is lifted, they can get their permits immediately. They're still being reviewed. And there still are inspections occurring of construction that started prior to April 4th, as in the order. I can get additional clarifying information and send it to all of council as well.
Councillor Jarvis.
I'm trying to go back to what Councillor Cooper came up with, and that's that the wording in that motion. And I'm wondering, I know we just discussed it, or Councillor Cooper did, but have we decided on making an adjustment there? Because in my mind, it does indicate that the mayor and CEMC and CAO can cancel council and committee meetings. Now, while I understand the committee meeting aspect of things, just canceling council outright, and that seems to be basically a carte blanche statement, leaves us conceivably, though unlikely, with no meetings at all as per your jurisdiction, Mr. Mayor.
I'm hearing some pleasant music in the background. I think that if somebody wishes to make an amendment, that could be considered by council. Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, if we could take the word council and presumably council meeting, committee meetings, because I think that should be a decision of council and not others. And I think if we took those two out of there, that I could get behind it.
Councillor Cooper.
There we go. I keep forgetting it's got to go to the bottom here. Yeah, so I'd be happy to second that motion. I think that that change would just take out the vagueness that is, or it's not actually vague. It's all encompassing and make it more clear. So that's my opinion, and I'd be happy to second this.
Okay, that means we get to discuss it. Anybody want to add to the discussion?
Sorry, Your Worship.
Clerk. I see the
Can we-
clerk's hand. I see the clerk's hand up.
Can I recommend a friendly amendment request as opposed to dealing with that as a separate item? Currently, I have Councillor Jarvis as moving the motion and Councillor Wianco as seconding the motion. And the request would be to remove the portion of the resolution that references the canceling of council and committee meetings. Are Councillor Jarvis and Councillor Wianco acceptable to this friendly amendment at this point in time?
Yes.
I didn't second it. But if you're going to take anything out, I would be the two words "and council." So we can cancel programs and committee meetings, but take the word out "and council." But I didn't second this motion.
Well, as I explained earlier, Councillor Wianco, the mover and seconder was done arbitrarily for a matter of convenience. And if anybody wants to change their names, we can certainly do that.
Okay, that's a different matter. Okay, no, but I'll support the idea of taking the two words out "and council."
Well, then I'll go back to Councillor
So it
Hazel
would
to
be
make
cancel-
your original suggestion.
I think Brian wanted to speak. Why don't I let him speak first?
Okay. Councillor Bocek. Councillor Bocek, could you please unmute yourself?
There we go. Everybody can hear?
Yes.
Okay. The mayor is the chair of our council, and meetings can be canceled by the chair or can be enacted by the chair at any time with notice. So I think in our procedure, it already states that the mayor can cancel council or committee meetings at his will. And that's already on the books as far as I know. I don't see the reason that we're making a change. Perhaps our clerk could let us know. This has been a standard practice for the amount of time I've been on council. And it's the right of the chair to do that. So I don't see where we're changing anything.
To our clerk, can you respond to Mr. Bocek? Councillor Bocek, sorry.
Sorry, Your Worship, I was just looking for the exact wording within the procedural bylaw, but generally, yes, Councillor Bocek is correct in that the chair has the ability to call, adjourn, and cancel meetings.
So, in other words, whether we leave this in or leave this out doesn't actually change what we can do.
Exactly.
Correct.
Well, then obviously I would have zero issue with removing it.
So then I go back to Councillor Jarvis and Councillor Wianco to see if they're willing to accept the friendly amendment to remove and council and committee meetings.
I'm happy with the change.
Councillor Wianco?
I would just like the words "and council" removed.
In other words, Councillor Wianco, you want to give the myself, the CAO, and the CEMC the power to cancel committee meetings without council approval.
Yeah, the Waste Committee, Committee of Adjustments, the Honey Harbor Committee and so on. Yeah, I can see you can cancel them. I don't think you need to go to council for that, but maybe you shouldn't have, I don't know. I can live with the way it is, but as a compromise, I would go with and council only.
Councillor Hazelton, I saw your hand and then followed by Councillor Cooper.
So to our clerk, can you tell us who has today the right to cancel committee meetings?
Through your worship to Councillor Hazelton, I see that Jess might want to say something. Generally, the chair does. Oftentimes, it's in consultation with staff because we have further information on, if our meetings are impacting other moving pieces. So often it is done in consultation with staff, which would include, in this case, the CAO and the CEMC, but often the clerk is involved in those conversations as well as the mayor.
Okay, Councillor, okay, sorry, CAO Gunby followed by Councillor Cooper.
Just to also just go off of what the clerk was stating, if for Committee of Adjustment, for example, if there are no applications, we just cancel the meeting. If there are a few applications, we're not going to cancel a meeting. However, based on information that we've been learning daily from the ministry, and I've emailed council, I think it was last week about this, they are advising against having any planning public meetings at this time. So we're not planning on having any planning council meetings or Committee of Adjustment meetings until the province can either find a way or amend the Planning Act that we can still do this, because as you can see here during this meeting, we can't have members of the public come in and ask us things and have delegations. So with public meetings, we're not having those anytime soon anyways.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much. And just a clarification, quick clarification on committee meetings. You said the chair, I believe, has the authority to cancel or call or whatever. So are you talking about the committee chair or the mayor?
Committee chair.
Thank you. So that helps us avoid having all the power in one person's hands. And I guess the other thing that I would comment here is that this is about intent as opposed to technicality, where we still have an overarching procedural bylaw that says the mayor can cancel or call meetings. I think we're trying to point out that it's important for us not to imply that one person will be ruling our township for months and months. That's, I think, the main concern. And I wasn't expecting the mayor to do so. I just think we need to be careful with our wordings. Thank you.
Well, and I'm just going to add, thank you for that clarification, Councillor Cooper. And I certainly wasn't intending to exercise those powers. And I have no issue with whether 2 or 5 words are removed from this resolution, because I think it'll still allow all of us to do our jobs to the best of our ability. So I guess we're still stuck with, do we make the friendly amendment that is removing 2 or 5 words? And I'm going to go back to Councillor Wienko. Would you agree if we remove all 5 words and then take a vote on this?
If that's your wish.
I just think it might be the most practical at the moment, and I think it will still allow all of us to do our jobs.
Okay.
So should I read the motion? I'll read a modified motion. It's after moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Wienko, and including the friendly amendment as proposed by Councillors Hazelton and Cooper. The motion now would read, whereas the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a pandemic, and whereas the province of Ontario declared a state of emergency on March 17th, 2020 amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas the Township of Georgian Bay made a declaration of emergency on March 27, 2020 amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas the federal, provincial, and municipal responses to best practice advised on limiting gatherings and social contact has been to limit access, including the closure of programs, facilities, and offices. And whereas the situation is very dynamic and evolving quickly, often requiring immediate action, now therefore be it resolved. 1, that council ratifies the administrative actions taken to close municipal facilities, parks, and programs. 2, and that the chief administrative officer, or CAO, in consultation with the mayor and the community emergency management coordinator, CEMC, is delegated decision-making authority to close municipal facilities, adjust service levels, cancel programs, and to reinstate as the situation evolves. And that the chief administrative officer inform council of actions taken at the earliest opportunity. All those in favor? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hands. That has been carried unanimously. The next item on our agenda is a Port Severn Food Bank request. And I believe that's over to Ms. Schneier, our Director of Sustainability.
Good afternoon. The Port Severn Food Bank is temporarily being operated by the Baxter Ward Lions Club. It is a mandate of the Lions International to support food banks, as well as many other popular initiatives that you might be familiar with the Lions. The reason this came to be is because when the district set back the amount of employees being able to move around the townships, it meant that our food bank coordinator would be unable to come and physically deliver food in the community of Port Severn. As a sidebar, the Lions had already expressed an interest in potentially taking over the food bank and had participated in a few sessions of food security, food safety, food sensitivity, as well as client sensitivity. So they were pretty poised to be able to jump onto the task when this came forward. So the municipality has worked back and forth with the district and the Lions, and to date, the Lions are operating the day-to-day operations of the food bank, but the process for which somebody gets food in Lower Georgian Bay is they get access to content via our social media, as well as our website, the district website, and signs on the door at the Baxter Ward Community Center right beside the food bank sign that suggests that any client that wants to have access to the food bank would need to contact an employee at the district. So that employee is still there. His name is Justin. He answers the phones and does a stress test to be able to understand whether that client does or does not need the food bank. It's a pretty minimal stress test, especially at this time, but it does allow for a measure of accountability that the Lions can't take on right now, and the district has a far greater skill set to be able to perform. As soon as that stress test is complete, then our president of the Lions, who's a local resident, Beth Heinzman, gets the call from the district and food delivery is organized and arranged. The way it is working right now is the food delivery is done without any face-to-face connection. That doesn't diminish the services that are available to anybody who calls for the food bank. Justin at the district does find out if they need assistance with rent or hydro or any type of other services that are available through social services. But when we trickle down to just the food delivery portion, it's morphed into a situation where that resident is contacted to be advised what time to pick up their basket. And the basket is set outside of the Baxter Ward Community Center, usually in a 15-minute interval, and the basket is picked up. So the behind the scenes on this is that the food bank volunteers from the Lions are watching the flyers. They've got a relationship going right now with the Foodland in Coldwater and are more than willing to buy from the Honey Harbor Town Center when they open. But right now we're dealing with the Coldwater Foodland. They're able to buy more in bulk for some of the 2-for-1 sales or the sales in general because the Midland store, Barber and Haskell, just donated a beautiful brand new fridge for them. So milk is able to be stored, fresh produce, as well as frozen items, like just items that need to be frozen, especially meat. So that's happening. And we're coming to you today because we do have a pretty good reserve fund based on donations. And in the past couple of days, we've also received an additional $2,780 in donations just from people in the community, as well as the Muskoka Community Foundation and the McLaren, the Macmillan Center also donated money. And we would like to be able to apply to Lions International for one of two funds. There is a disaster fund that is available for the Lions group that they would have to sort of apply for in advance of a disaster, but may still apply as we travel through this pandemic. And then the second item, possible grant, would be a straight food bank grant. In order for the food bank to apply, they need to have 10%, the Lions to apply into the food bank category, they have to have 10% of the money to be able to leverage it to get the additional 90. You can get up to $100,000 in support funding on that, that grant. And so I'm to you today a resolution that would ask whether or not you would allow the municipality to take $10,000 from our food bank reserve fund and be able to offer a letter of support to the Lions so that they could apply. And if they are successful, then we will take that $10,000 and put it, give it to them to be able to make it their matching contribution.
Point of clarification.
I can answer any questions you like about it.
See, when you say matching contribution, but you mean a contribution, we put in 10%, they're putting in, the Lions are putting in 90%?
Lions International, which is a huge international corporation, does have significant funds to be able to trickle down to local clubs like the Baxter Ward Lions. If they apply, they have to have their 10%. Certainly not matching, you're right. It's a 10-90 split.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I had understood clearly what you're discussing. Now, I saw somebody sent with Brian, Councillor Bochek, was your hand up? I saw somebody's hand go up, but then the screens all moved around.
Yes, it was, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. My question is to our sustainability officer, Jennifer. Is it possible that you can work with Ms. Heinzman through the application process? I know that some of these applications can be very daunting and troublesome for people that don't do it on a regular basis. So I don't know if anything needs to be approved, but it sounds to me like it's a win-win situation using funds that were allocated for the food bank to gain 90% more funds from another organization to support this cause. I'm totally in agreement with this, and I just think that perhaps Beth may need a little bit of guidance getting through the red tape and such, and perhaps you or one of your staff members could offer assistance.
I believe that is the plan. I've certainly offered my services to be able to help the Lions. The treasurer, her name is Lisa Buck, and she's taken on the role of looking for these grants. It ultimately they're unable to apply if we haven't passed this threshold, and there will be other thresholds that we'll have to pass. Right now, the municipality owns the food bank. If they are successful getting that amount of money, we may have to eventually pass it over to the Lions Club. But I mean, ultimately, that's really great for community capacity building if a service group comes in and takes on a project like that. So there's a lot of interest in our food bank from the contributors side. Residents in Oak Bay are excited about it. Residents in Muskie Bay area are also excited about it. We're hearing over and over how people want to contribute, and we're getting cash donations for the food bank. So yes, I'll help and be able to hopefully leverage this to make it an even better project.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Councillor Rienko.
Jennifer, just for clarification, do I understand that the Baxter Lions Club wants to raise $100,000 for the food bank in Port Severn? To me, that sounds like quite a bit of money for a small group. What's the total they want to raise?
So we'll get guidance from Lions International once we know how much money we can use The maximum amount of the grant is $100,000. It is a one-time application, so you don't get to come back to the well. So it's possible that they may go for the full amount if they're advised that there's enough in that fund to be able to support it, because there's no time limit on when they need to spend it and what they can spend it on. So right now, we're asking you for a resolution up to X dollars for a maximum percentage of X percent. And I mean, we might as well go with 10,000 and see where we hit, so we don't have to come back to you and ask you to change that amount. If you use language like up to, it gives us some leverageable room. So Councillor Raiko, I don't know what they would do with $100,000, but I'm not really quite sure what the future brings either. So it certainly is a good starting point to have a conversation about long-term anyways.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, two things. One, just to appreciate the explanation, Jennifer. So just for clarification, you just nod your head. As I understand that $100,000, if we were to get that much from Lions International, would be for the food bank's use. Basically, they would not be able to go back, as you said, for any further money from Lions International, correct?
Just for the food bank. There's many funds for the Lions, but the food bank is a one-time application.
Okay, so, and as you say, that can be used over the life of the food bank if they want to extend it out that far. So that clarifies that point. What's I just need clarification how much money we have in our food bank reserves as it currently stands.
There's about $25,000 in that account.
And okay, so we're potentially taking 10,000, not necessarily, is that correct?
That's right. If they're successful, we'll give them a letter that says that it's available to them to use. And if they are successful, then we will transfer that money over.
Okay, and it's for them anyway. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think if I understand this correctly, they might be successful and they might only get, say, $25,000, not 100, and therefore we wouldn't be necessarily putting 10,000. We'd be putting in 2.5 to meet our 10% obligation.
That's right.
Any other comments? So the motion, and I'll point out to our clerk that I'm changing it to read Baxter Ward Lions Club, not Port Severn Lions Club, because the Lions Club is called Baxter Ward. The motion reads, whereas council has received a verbal report from the Director of Sustainability about the possibility of leveraging donations received for the food bank against an application for poverty relief funds available through the Baxter Ward Lions Club. And whereas the council understands that leveraging these funds is the best way to make more with less. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council approves the leveraging to a maximum of $10,000 and equivalent to 10%, and the council directs staff to assist the Baxter Ward Lions Club with the application. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I make it unanimous, so that has passed unanimously. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Our next topic of discussion is the boat launch discussion, 5D, and staff, Ms. Gunby, I believe you're going to speak to this matter.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to start with this matter. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions from members of council, and other staff can provide clarification for sure. So the reason this is just entitled boat launch discussion is because I've heard many different comments from different people, whether it be a member of council, a permanent resident, a seasonal resident, someone who doesn't even live in this township. I've heard from a lot of people that half of the people are asking us why our boat launches are still open, because they should be closed. And then the other half is saying, you better not close the boat launches because my marina is closed and now I can't get to my cottage and there's nothing legally saying I cannot go to my cottage, which is an accurate statement. So I've just done some research quickly with the help of our Director of Sustainability. And just to give you an idea, the following places, as far as we could find, I'm sure there's more, have closed their boat launches. Owen Sound, Aurelia, Peterborough, Penetang, Perry Sound, Barrie, Archipelago, McDougall, Midland, Wasaga Beach, Tay, Georgina, Scugog. while they're not directly abutting us, they are ones that have closed their boat launches. The notices that some of them gave, because the province has stated that marinas are only an essential service if they are providing transportation to your primary residence. And also they have stated that municipal parks and outdoor amenities shall be closed. I think, I know for sure that at least 4 of the places I've mentioned have interpreted that the latter point about parks and outdoor amenities, that boat launches are included, so they have closed their boat launches, assuming that they are complying with the order. Now, Mr. Sokaj and myself both called the provincial hotline they've set up for clarification to ask if boat launches were included in what should be closed. Mr. Sokaj, the answer he received was, it's up to you. And the answer I received was boat launches are not on the list of essential services. Now, technically, this is one of those items that we could take the ability and close them right now without council direction. Based on a bylaw from 2010, 2010-67, it defines the park, and it includes launches, and it states that the manager is authorized to close off for time periods posted as the manager deems necessary any part or public place or parts thereof to relieve or prevent overcrowding, traffic congestion, property damage, or in the interest of public safety, which would go about what the Premier and the health officials' messaging has been. However, this also follows under that previous resolution that we passed, that just because myself and the mayor and the manager of, or sorry, the director of operations have the ability to close this, this is something that we were not willing to do, to state whether they will remain open or closed. We definitely wanted council's input before any decision was made on this. So that is why it is an open discussion. We do have resolutions prepared, whether if council says they want to close our ramps, or if they say they want to make sure that they remain open, we have a resolution for either or. So council, we're really hoping that we have a fruitful discussion about this so that we can make a decision going forward, because that has been our hottest topic. And the main communications that we receive from people is a question asking if they're open or not. Right now they are, but based on this discussion, that may or may not change. So back to you.
Okay, now I'm going to say, I suspect that this may be a lengthy discussion, and I'm going to encourage everybody that under normal proper procedures, everybody gets to speak only twice, and that they, if their points have already been raised, that they simply state they agree with what the councillor before them, a councillor before them has stated. I know for myself that I've heard very strongly expressed opinions on either end and somewhere in between on this discussion. And so I can appreciate that this might be a fulsome discussion. So with that, I'm going to see who puts their hand up first. Councillor Cooper, you were the first.
Lucky me. So
you put your hand up first.
I guess what I would like to see, and it sort of goes to what I started out with at the beginning of this meeting, there's another issue that relates to this, I think, and that is the marina closures and access to water, access to their residences, be they water access or road access, and the disparity between. And I am going to suggest, just as a thought, if we are able to have another meeting next week, we could be discussing this matter along with what we are willing or not willing to do with respect to the marina closure issue. So I think it plays into that whole subject. And so my suggestion is that we have a nice discussion today, but maybe we might want to table this until a meeting earlier by next week at the latest. Thank you.
Councillor Bocek.
I've certainly had a lot of engagement with constituents, seasonal residents, permanent residents on this matter. And the feeling is that this is not something that should be tabled or waiting for a later date. The emergency is now, the urgency is now. There's a virus that's being spread through human contact. And the more people that are in an area together, the more chance there is of spreading this virus, especially when there's people coming from outside the area to the area. I will add, these are not my direct reflections. This is what I've compiled out of the literally 40 to 50 emails I've received and social media comments. So when it comes to this issue, I'm pretty steadfast. I think the launch ramps should be closed immediately, and they should not have a rescheduled date to be reopened. That will be dealt with on a weekly basis moving forward as the provincial government it gives us more insight to where we're headed with this. So if you're looking for my opinion, and it pretty much cannot be swayed, is we close the launch ramps immediately. The marina owners have contacted me. 6 marina owners have contacted me stating that they have an issue with road access cottages being available, non-road access cottages not being available. You only have to go down the Severn River to see on the one side of the river, all the lights are on, all the cars are in the driveway, and there's people moving around. And on the north side of the river, where it's water access only, there is no lights on, there's no boats on the dock, and there's no people there. So in conclusion, I think it's imperative we close the launch ramps. We keep as many people in their homes as was advised by the provincial government, stay at home. And I think we should take that and heed their warning and have our seasonal residents stay at home until we can move out of this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Rianco.
Sorry, just trying to unmute myself. There we go.
We knew that.
I'm curious to know how many, I know of the Honey Harbor boat ramp. There's one in Severn Park. What other boat ramps are we talking about?
Mr. Solcash.
Through the mayor, there are 14 launches that we have. If you like, I can list them off. There's Port Severn Park, Honey Harbor, Bollocks Road, Wauwatosa, South Gibson, Miners Bay, Gala Lake, Bloody Bay, 12 Mile, and Stewart Lake.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go back to my concern, and that is, I know that the province has indicated that where services are needed, in other words, if a cottage needed immediate work for any reason, then contractors are okay to go out and do repair work. I know of at least one contractor out of Honey Harbor that would access the Honey Harbor boat ramp in order to get 2 cottages to do work. And so there I have a problem with closing that ramp for that purpose, sole purpose alone. I'm also curious to know, I know that the Honey Harbor ramp has very, very limited, if any, parking at all around it. So that would be restricted just by virtue of the parking that's not available. I presume the Severn ramp, it's paid parking as well. So I don't know what the limitations are there, and I don't know about the other ramps. But I am concerned that contractors do have a right to go out and at least do emergency work if needed on sites on the water that's boat access only. And I don't want to close the ramps if that is a service that's going to be required by anybody.
I'm not sure if I may, I'm not sure I've heard about the emergency repairs. I've heard that they are allowed to continue on work where the permits are open, and including seasonal, apparently, with the explanation of, you know, if you started framing in a roof and you can't close it in, it could create a lot of cost. But I'm not sure. Maybe somebody else can clarify. I don't recall reading anything about repair work.
I was considering that under, it's almost in my mind like emergency services, though on a significantly lower level, but probably thinking along the same lines. Maybe I just misinterpreted what was already there, Peter. But along the same lines, though.
CEO Gunby.
I don't know why I have the need to grin so hard when I put my hand up. I'm not in kindergarten. But I just wanted to state to Councillor Jarvis that we are getting, I'd say, a dozen emails a day with updates and changes. I have yet to come across something that states anything about emergency repair. But I will go through the information. If I do come across that, I will definitely let council know, but I haven't seen anything to date.
All right, I believe it's Councillor Wienko, and then I'm going to say, sorry, I'm going to let our fire chief speak to this before, and then we're going to go Councillor Wienko, followed by Councillor Douglas. Mr. Van Dam, you have to unmute.
Is that a little better?
Yes.
Brad and myself have had the discussion that if we close the boat ramp, some of these boat ramps need to be accessible for emergency services, police and all of that. So the means that we are doing it, that we're proposing to close the ramps, is that we will have the access to be able to open those ramps back up if it's needed for emergency repairs, that type of stuff. Keep in mind that the emergency repairs is going to have to be proven that it's a necessary done, because we can't have contractors going out and starting construction on buildings without building permits. So existing permits are going to still be allowed to go. There may be a need with those that are going that we may need to provide access. We have a legal right to provide access to the people that they're permanent residents and they can prove that they have permanent residence. We have to guarantee that they can take their boat out of the water if they need to. So the proposal is we're looking at concrete blocks with chains that we can lower the chains. We'll be putting the contact numbers at these closures to allow them to contact us so we can open the gates up. Our bylaw officers that'll be out on the weekends will be able to open those locks if it's necessary. During the day, Public Works is available to do it. So we have some contingency plans to allow emergency access to those ramps if required.
Thank you. Councillor Wienko.
Can I hear from Cynthia before I make my comments?
Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, thank you. Well, right. I think that it becomes a bit of an issue to close off for the contractors, not just on emergency repairs, but some of us are offering services to our not our permanent residents, or our primary residents that are on the lake for groceries and supplies. And I don't necessarily think that's going to be an issue, because that's being addressed by Chief Van Dam. But where do we stand with the fact that people, it's not illegal to go to their cottage, and if they can't get there through the marinas and they can't get there through the ramps, are we going to get ourselves into a legal quagmire where people can't? We say it's not illegal to get to your property, but yet we're going to close off access for them to get to their properties. So I don't disagree. And I mean, I have been in support of the province decision to isolate and let's, do our best to shut everything down and put it in lockdown, because I want to see this curve flatten out and go down. But on the other hand, how do we explain that exactly when the law says you have the right to get to your property, but yet we're closing off the access to it? Because the marinas are certainly closed at this point, and I think that's mandated by the province under essential services. So I have a bit of an issue at this point on whether we do or we don't. I'd like to see them closed off, because I would like to see the flow stop up here right now, for even if it's for a month or 2 weeks, whatever. But I also at the same time have to ask the question, we've already put a statement out saying it is not illegal to get to your property or to go to your cottage, but yet we're cutting off their access to get there. So I think we're going to have to answer that question, because that is the number one question I'm getting right now. How is that even possible? On one hand, we're saying it's legal. On the other hand, we're saying we're not letting you. So
I don't believe we've issued a statement saying it's you have legal right to access your property. I don't think the township has issued any statement like that.
have we, Jessica? Sorry.
In the press releases, I don't think we've stated it's not illegal to go to your cottage, but the wording we've used has not stated that it is illegal. Make sense? Because it's not illegal. There's no law stating you cannot go to your cottage,
So it has
as we
been,
can see from everyone driving to their road access cottages.
yeah. So there has been something, because it's gone out on Facebook, and it's something, a statement that you put out, and it does clearly state that it's not, well, I don't know. Do you want to tell me what the wording is on that? Maybe you can read it to us, Jess. Because that has now come up a ton of times for me.
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Okay, it just got posted yesterday on our Facebook page. Maybe we'll let Paul go further on with this, and I'll just pull it up and I'll read it to you. Because I just have a question on that. I don't know how to answer that question. So maybe go ahead and let Paul speak while I pull this up.
Councillor Wienko, and I believe I saw Councillor Hazelton's hand at some point, so you're next on the list.
Okay, I don't know how big an issue this is. I would think over 90% of the people who have to get to their cottage by boat, their boats are tied up at the marinas. And very, very few people, I know on 6 Mile, for example, very, very few people take their boats home in the wintertime. So most of them are tied up here anyway. So I'm not quite sure who we're trying to stop coming, and if it's even worth it. And my understanding is this requirement is only till the 18th of April. And you're not going to do anything today. You're not going to close them off today. But tomorrow's a holiday, Monday's a holiday. You know, we're talking 3 or 4 days before the 18th. So how much work do we want to do between now and the 18th? And is it really worth the effort to do this? Is there a huge cry to get on the water up here? I don't think so. So I don't see this as an issue. Who wants to use these ramps? And maybe a half dozen on a weekend. So what? 99 or some percent of the cottagers, their boats are tied up at the marina. So I'm not quite sure why this is such an important issue, and why we can't just leave it until after the 18th. Because you won't do it until Tuesday, and that's what the 14th. So like 4 or 5 days before it might end. So I just can't get too excited about this whole issue.
Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you. I would want to, don't want to sound too much like a broken record, but I've gone back to some of the legislation that's in place. And I just wanted to remind everybody that the emergency management plan at the provincial level specifically calls out the reasons for enacting an emergency situation where it could result in serious harm to persons or substantial property damage. And to Councillor Jarvis's point, if there is substantial damage to properties, contractors need to be able to get there. Self-contractors need to be able to get there. So I think those are things we need to be aware of. Additionally, I've gone back and looked at where the province has determined that there is a fine for disobeying a directive. There is no fine that has been defined for going to a cottage, whether it's water access, road access. There are no fines in place today. So I think we want to be aware of that. Now, shifting gears and supporting Councillor Wienko, I don't know about the other boat launches in the community, but Councillor Jarvis stated accurately that in Honey Harbor, there's virtually no parking available. I would hazard a guess that the maximum number of boats that you could launch in that area, given the no parking and the challenge of getting in and out of the water, you might have 4 or 5 in a day. It's a non-issue. The fact that this government legislation is 14-day renewable. My recommendation is certainly for the Honey Harbor boat launch ramp, you end up with a win-win really if you first of all say, we're going to encourage the police to actively enforce the no parking circumstances in the Honey Harbor boat launch area. That is a win for the local people, and for the water access people, if they truly have an emergency, they'll figure out how to launch their boat and get their vehicle and trailer away from the launch ramp. And so I think it's a win-win, but doing nothing and waiting for the next phase of the provincial legislation, I think is the right decision to make. Thank you.
Okay, before I recognize Councillor Cooper, has everybody spoken on this matter? I think all of you have had a round. Okay, then we'll do one more round in a moment. I think part of the issue is how we read the provincial regulations, and the provincial regulations include basically the closing of all recreational facilities. And so therefore there's some debate as whether a launch ramp is included in a recreational facility. I've seen what I would consider reasonably good legal opinions on either side of that one. So I'm not sure we can find a definitive answer that way. And certainly the state of emergency, one of the reasons for declaring, one of the purposes rather of declaring a state of emergency, in which the province has certainly exercised, that is to restrict travel. And they're trying to restrict travel to essential travel only. And their idea of essential travel is when you're trying to includes accessing your principal residence. I think, unfortunately, what has been lost in some of this is the fact that we have a significant number of land access cottagers in our area, not just in our township, but let me call it cottage country, if I may, who are, in my opinion, not properly exercising their civic duty in this province. And I think that's very unfortunate, and certainly their behavior, and I'm not saying all, let me make very clear that we have some people, or quite a few, who are behaving very responsibly, but there's clearly a fair number who are not, including dumping their garbage where no bin has been placed, including having fires. I'm a little worried about, I haven't heard reports yet of fireworks. I hate to see that happen this weekend. So I think part of what we're considering here is a little bit bigger picture. To what degree do we want to be part of the provincial efforts to restrict people's travel? Having said that, I will now reopen it up for the second round. I think I've seen both Councillor Cooper and Councillor Douglas's hands. And I think Councillor Douglas just confirmed that. Do you want to go ahead, Councillor Douglas?
Yep, so I just took a quick read on what was put on Facebook. That was something that came out that you signed, Jessica, unless this is being fraudulently put together. It says it's accessibility concerns. There are no fines set by the township for you going to your cottage. And then further down in it says, there is no law or order stating seasonal residents cannot access their cottage by the province, but the province has asked that people stay at their primary residence, and it goes on about why. So that brings me back to the original thing that I had to say is, if we are saying that there is no law against you going there, although the province would like you not to, and we'd like to support that, how do we legally close those ramps? Because that's the only way they can get to their cottage, is to put a boat in and go. And there is a lot of parking at Miners Bay that people can do. They don't need to use the marinas. So I'm just kind of wondering, I'm not saying that I don't support not closing them, because I too feel that, we need to do a lockdown here for a little while, and let's see if we can't get this curve to sort out. But on the other hand, there is no law for people getting to they can go if they want, if they choose to ignore the province's recommendations. So where do we stand legally on actually closing these down so they can't get to them if we do that? That's my concern, is if you're following me on this one, at one point here we're saying there's no law stating you cannot get to your seasonal residence, but on the other hand, we're as a township going to put locks up and chains. So where do we stand with that? And maybe that's an answer from Chief Van Dam, and maybe he doesn't know that yet. I don't know.
CEO Gunby.
Sorry, Jeff. Okay.
Just creeping up in the corner.
Yeah, Councillor Cooper, I do see you, but I'm going to let our CEO respond to Councillor Douglas before we go on to your points.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. I honestly can't keep up because we've been releasing so much information as we get it. But yes, there is no law stating you cannot be on the water, or you cannot go to your cottage, or you cannot drive or find a friend with a boat ramp. to get your boat in the water if your marina is not letting you. And I did ask a lawyer yesterday for any input on this matter. Being a Toronto lawyer, he of course has not heard anything like this happening near him, or no one has asked his permission. But he did go through the Municipal Act and the Emergency Management Act and stated that the power does exist for council or the mayor alone to close boat launches if they wish to exercise it. Now that doesn't, we have the power to do a lot of things, but that does not stop anyone from challenging us legally. So there's nothing stating that if we decide to close the boat launches, we will be free from any sort of legal ramification. We can never guarantee that with any matter.
Of course, there's also conversely nothing that says we won't be legally challenged if we decide not to close them.
Correct.
Yeah. Councillor Cooper.
Well, it's been a very good discussion. I'd just like to touch on a few points. One is that with respect to the question of access for contractors who don't have their own facility on the water to go out and do emergency repairs, I think there's more to it than that. There might also be that contractor has a contract out somewhere on Georgian Bay, for example, to do some work that's already been started with a permit. So those are, by taking out the launch ramp, you've restricted that business from conducting their business. So that's point number one. The reason I wanted to have this matter, I think we should actually defer this, and if we can have a meeting early next week, that would be suitable. I think we have a date coming up with the province very shortly anyway, which has been pointed out. But this closure really addresses part of what I would like to see discussed in our discussion about access to seasonal residents, road or water access. That's what I would like to have a discussion about. And I understand that the province has made a decision. That doesn't mean that we can't take a position and talk to the province about the decision they've made in their second announcement. And I happen to believe that if we close off our marinas and we close off our boat launches, then we should close off our other seasonal roads. Put barriers there. These people are coming up there. If you talk to somebody that's along the shore of Port Severn looking over, is it Tay or Tyne, I'm not sure which township, and you'll see that all the seasonal residences have lights on them on the weekend. And yet on our side of the township, they'll be there too if they can drive there, but if they're not driving there, they're on an island, they can't get there. So it's a very disturbing situation in the township of Georgian Bay. We know that well over half of our residents are water access. And I think Georgian Bay in general probably represents 60 or 70% of all the water access residences in the province. It's a big issue, and it's going to become very big in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I think we need to have a fulsome discussion about this. There's going to be a lot of rage if people are kept away from their cottages and everybody else can drive to theirs. That's a problem. So I just think we need to have a very fulsome discussion about this, because we're going to wear this one way or another. Thank you.
If I may, Councillor Cooper, just add one thing in before I recognize Councillor Wienko. I believe that CEO Gunby informed us that the archipelago has closed their launch ramps. So they're just for your information. So there is a significant portion of Georgian Bay that where people cannot access their seasonal residents. The other comment I'm going to add is I know that this is an active debate at the district and provincial level at this time. I have no idea. I was kind of hoping that maybe we'd hear something from the province today, but we haven't about this matter, because it is clearly an issue that has been brought forth by a lot of people, and very strongly, and on both sides. So it is a challenging issue. Councillor Wienko, followed by Councillor Butcher.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, on the marina issue, the question is really, does do the rights of the cottagers outweigh does the rights of the cottager to access their seasonal dwellings outweigh the health and safety of the marinas owners and staff? And if the marinas became a non-essential service, then I think you're inviting up a heck of a population of people from Southern Ontario to the cottages. And I think that goes against the whole idea of the province trying to keep people home. I don't want to double the population of our township just to allow the marinas to go ahead at this time. But I think this April 18th date is critical. The province has to make a decision if they're going to continue with the list of non-essential facilities, and if they still include the marinas. But I like to wait for that date to find out what the movement of people are going to be in our township. Again, I don't think opening or closing our boat launches makes a real big difference either way. I'll probably drive over there this weekend to find out how many people are using our boat launches, and I'll get a better feel for this. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of people, because I don't think a lot of people have the boats back home. So I'm kind of neutral on the whole situation, and I'd rather wait until the province makes a decision after the 18th of April. And then if they want to continue for another 2 or 3 weeks and closing the marinas, then yes, maybe we should close our launches. But to get all the staff out there on Monday, on the 14th of April, the 15th of April, they'll get them all closed. Then the province changes their mind. On 3 days later, the province changed their mind. We got to get it all back in. So I think we're a little premature on deciding to close these facilities at this time. And I'd rather wait till after the 18th to find out. I'm sure the province will make a decision before the 18th, but wait for a decision, make their decision before we make our decision.
Councillor Wojcik.
Well, I guess I can't agree less with Councillor Cooper or Councillor Wienko. I think the time is now. I think the time is today. We're coming into the Easter long weekend where there's going to be a rash of residents coming up wanting to get to their cottage. I think we need to look at we're in the middle of a pandemic here. We're in the middle of a health crisis. Lung failure is a lot more important to me than fixing a roof that's leaking, or a dock that's broken, or a window that's busted, or some sort of repair, or some open permit that's sitting so somebody can have a sauna built in their front yard on this open permit. I am 100% behind closing the launch ramps, closing them today. And part of the reasoning behind this is I've been out with boots on the ground to the marinas, talking to the marina operators. Here's a typical situation. A customer comes up of theirs from the city, from Toronto, demands that he get his boat in the water through this marina. The marina says, we are closed, our ramp is closed, we'll be fined $7,500 or more if we do this. The customer will say, fine, give me my boat and I'll take it to the public launch ramp and launch it and get to my cottage that way. This marina operator is now subject to close contact with this person. He's being requested to move 15 boats out of the way to get this one guy's boat out and get the shrink wrap off it so he can go launch it at the public launch ramp. These marina operators are not only afraid of their health, they're afraid that they're being asked by the province to be police, which they're not equipped to do. They're not in a position to tell people yes or no or enforce a provincial suggestion. I truly believe, and my constituents that I've spoken to, and not all of them, but the majority of them say these launch ramps need to be closed. We don't wait. We don't wait till after the Easter weekend. We don't go there Monday and see how many people are launching. That's too late. We're in a health crisis here. We need to keep people at home. It's been very clear for the past 2 weeks. I don't know what people don't understand, but they've been told by the province, stay at home, don't go to your cottage. And you can use the excuse, oh, I need to do an emergency repair. That's not important at this time. What's important is stopping this curve in the pandemic. So I will not support anything that keeps the launch ramps open. I may lose the next election over this. I don't really care. We're in a health crisis. We need to take action, and the action needs to be taken now. Think about our marine operators. Think about our residents. My wife and kids live in this community. There's no COVID-19 in this community right now. But if you start bringing 15, 20,000 people up from the city, I don't think it'll be long until we see it. So please think about health before you think about a cottage repair.
Next. Councillor Jarvis.
I'm thinking along the lines of Councillor Wianco, and let's wait for the, I mean, in spite of what Councillor Bochek has just stated, I think that maybe we wait to see what the province comes up with. Again, there are no specific directives with regards to certain aspects of water access with regards to either emergency services or contractors right now. Why don't we wait and see what the province comes up with early next week and go from there?
Thank you. Councillor Bochuk, you've had your turn. I'm going to go Councillor Douglas and Councillor Hazelton before we. Oh, and Councillor Gunby, would you like me to call you that? The CEO Gunby, did you want to speak to it?
Please don't call me Councillor Gunby if you can help it. I just wanted to clarify that it's not early next week, it's next Saturday that the province is looking at the order.
Odds are they'll announce next Thursday or Friday what they're going to do.
Mhm.
Councillor Douglas.
So thank you. I can't agree more with Councillor Bochuk with what he has to say. This is unprecedented. We're in a pandemic. You know, I mean, I'm a contractor. So do I want to see my company continue on? Yes, I do. But I think we all have to recognize there's extreme situation here of people being infected. And the more we bring into this area, the more risk we're at. And to say that there isn't going to be an influx, I can tell you there's 450 cottages on this lake alone. And if you take a look at our, well, you're probably not on our Facebook page, but it's kind of a 50-50. And so there are people absolutely trying to claw at getting up to their cottage. And as unfortunate as it is, and I mean, I'm sitting on the lake, so I'm going to get land-based no matter what I say or do here. 50% are going to hate me and 50% are going to love me. But I do feel that we have to act in the best interests of what our public and our health system is. I mean, people are dying here. This is not how important is it really to get up to your cottage at this point when people are frigging dying here? I don't understand why people just haven't been able to get their head wrapped around that. My question really had to do with what our legality is, but as you've pointed out, we could get sued either way. So, you know, but I mean, I have encouraged people at every turn, please stay home. Please just I mean, I wish the province would actually lock us down completely for a few weeks, because it does work. It's been proven to work in other countries. We've seen the lines dropping, and that's been on lockdown. So I'm of the opinion that we should, you know, shut our ramps down, even if it's on a temporary basis for a month. Just, thank you.
Councillor Hazelton, I think you've only spoken once this matter. Councillor Cooper, have you not spoken twice already?
I certainly have, as Cynthia Douglas. Thank
Yes.
you.
No, I'm just saying, I want to get Councillor Hazelton first before we dare even contemplate further discussion. Councillor Hazelton.
So is it possible to, in this discussion, either agree to dismiss any decision until later, or to deal with these on a case-by-case basis? So for example, as I indicated, in Honey Harbor, I think we have a unique circumstance. We have no parking. The likelihood of there being any significant use, very, very low. And to Councillor Jarvis's comment, you know, there is a potential need for contractors, and I'm not trying to suggest that that is you know, we need to look at that and say definitely not, because that's not life-saving. But I also don't want our fire chief to be a cop having to determine whether or not he's letting people out to permanent residence or not. So in Honey Harbor, I think we have a unique circumstance and a unique opportunity to do nothing other than enforce the parking, and the problem essentially goes away. it's so minuscule that you don't, like, my concern is, as Councillor Douglas has said, she's got 50-50 in her community. I would say if we were able to take an accurate poll in our community, it would be a lot stronger for people want to get out to their water access properties. But I would say that most don't want to go through the burden of having to launch their own boat, which, by the way, is probably already locked up in a current marina. And I do not want the marinas to be taking any time, any way, shape, or form to get a boat out for somebody because they're locked down. That's provincial legislation. I don't think we need to do anything in the way of adding to the legislation. Certainly for Honey Harbor, I think we just let it go. You can make different decisions for different launch ramps, but I think, as I said, the issue in Honey Harbor can be easily solved by the existing status of limited access, virtually no parking, and so small that it's almost not even worth talking about.
Just for your information, Councillor Hazelton, and I cannot vouch for its accuracy, but I was advised by two different people that the launch ramp in Honey Harbor last weekend was very busy. I don't know what that exactly means, but they said it was very busy. There was a steady stream of people launching boats.
Okay,
but I don't know what the numbers are.
So exactly. So, even if very busy gives you 5 or 10, that's really insignificant in the scope of the properties in Ward 4.
Councillor Hazelton, you wanted to speak? Councillor Bochuk wants to speak. Oh, and the fire chief wants to speak. Let's give the fire chief first dibs, and then we're going to do a quick third round. I'm going to be lenient, even though the CAO might hit me.
I just want to advise council that if you think that the province is going to relax on any of the standard or any of the things that they've brought forward today, the curve is still not flattening out. The curve is still going up. So if the province is going to do anything, it's going to be to make it even stringent to carry on. They'll be taking other actions. You have the authority today to be able to do it. I do not recommend that you close one ramp and keep open another. That is, you're going to pit the community against each other, and that's the last thing we really want to do. I understand we're pitting the community now with people who are accessing. I have been out in the community talking to the marine operators, trying to keep a heartbeat of what is actually going on out there. Calling the fire chief, the police. I can already tell you that we are into the policing world as it speaks. We are taking actions. The bylaw department here is running off our feet at this point. We're taking other actions to help staff here. With that, the other part is coming up is it's some of our boat storage areas are preparing boats to come up, and because they're not on the waters, they don't have any qualm. We have a number of boats that are in storage yards, those are the ones that are going to start coming out. We have a number of seasonal residents that are water access only that we know of last weekend that were accessing their cottages and doing it in an unsafe manner. We had people going out in canoes with no life jackets, no nothing out there. And it was an enforcement issue because the police boats weren't in the water. Our fire boats weren't in the water yet. As of this weekend, the police boat will be put, they have one boat that's ready to go back into the water. They've asked us to support them if they have any calls that we can access with our boats. So some of that is out there, but I just need you, when you're making your decisions, make sure you're thinking of all of the issues that are out there. And I wish you luck on the decision because we're never going to make everybody happy on this decision.
Okay. I'm going to allow a third round, but I want this to be a very fast round. Right now,
Worship, can I interrupt for a second?
yes,
Can you check your messages on your phone, please?
there's a message on my phone.
On your cell phone? Because I can't nudge you.
Okay. Yes. But I argued that one of those turns was a follow-up to a question that hadn't been satisfied before. Having said that, I'm going to make a couple comments. One is I was advised earlier today that at the provincial level, there is active discussion going on about whether next week they're going to further lock down the province. I think that we have to allow that is a possibility, that they're going to further restrict our abilities to travel or to I don't know what's coming, but they just said that they thought there might be, you know, a further lockdown of us, so that may happen. If my vote count is correct, and I'm not at all confident that it is, out of the 6 of you, it's like 2 say lock them down, 2 say keep them open, and 2 say defer the decision. Now, that may not be accurate, but we're all over the map here. So I want very brief final comments from each of you, and then we'll call a vote. And Councillor Cooper has been having his hand up for quite some while, and it's going to follow by Councillor Bocek, followed by Councillor Bianco, and the other 3 of you, you're after that. Councillor Cooper, go.
So thank you for that. And I'm very encouraged by what you were just saying in terms of potential changes at the provincial level. At the present time, it is most concerning to our constituents that we're being, the province and ourselves in this particular case, if we close the ramps, are being very uneven. It's I think a big concern for us, and I support, frankly, if we are closing the marinas and the ramps, we close the roads. And if that's what the province is talking about, I think we should lobby them to that extent. We've got a ton of people coming up to Muskoka, to all sorts of places across Ontario, Collingwood, King City, people coming out of the city, going to their residences and bringing what Councillor Bocek is very concerned about. I understand his concern, but let's be consistent. So I can't support closing this until such time as we are consistent. Thank you.
Okay, we like are joining dozens of other municipalities are facing this same frustration. Councillor Bocek. You have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
I'm here. Just for everyone's information, not to reiterate anything that's already been said, Tiny Township, Tay Township, Town of Penetang, Town of Midland, Georgian Bay Township all use GBGH Hospital. They have 3 ventilators, a total of 3 ventilators. They have 23 open beds, period. This isn't enough to cover the population we have here in a pandemic. If the senior citizens of our township get sick, not from COVID-19, but if they have a heart attack or any need for medical help, and we have an influx of cottagers and seasonal residents up here and they're using our facilities, there's going to be nothing here for us. 3 ventilators and 23 beds available at GBGH to service a huge area, including the township of Georgian Bay. I really don't think we need the additional tourism, tourists, seasonal residents, and others coming up. And I will agree with Councillor Cooper on one thing. It would be nice to stop the road access residents coming up as well, too. If there was any way to go door to door, find out from them if it's their principal residence or cottage, and if it's not their principal resident, send them back to their principal resident. We need to stop the influx of people coming to this township. Province has said it, we know it, and like most of the social media posts are, it's very selfish of anyone to travel at this time. That's it for me.
If I may, Councillor Bochek, I'm just going to add one extra comment. I've heard this from area hospitals on a regular basis. They always have a increase in traffic this time of year because too many people injure themselves when they first open up their cottage. I read recently one of the biggest risk of accidents are old men thinking they're still young. And I think maybe that, so anyway, I wanted to add that comment. I think Councillor Wienko was next.
Okay, I just basically have a question to staff. If we made the decision today to close all these boat launches, when would it happen? Would it happen before the long weekend, or tomorrow's a holiday? Are we going to close them today? Well, obviously not. But when would they be closed? Because if the province decides to extend this for another couple of weeks, another couple of months or whatever, I would be 100% in closing the boat launches. But if the staff can't get the materials out there and in place by next Tuesday, probably by Wednesday or Thursday, the province might change their mind. So why are we doing all this if it's not going to be of any use? So my question is really to staff, if you make a decision today to close all these things off, when would it actually occur?
We have two staff members who want to respond.
Tomorrow.
If I may add, through the mayor, we have contractors and staff lined up to start tomorrow morning to close the ramps. And we think it would take 1 day, but if it took 2 days, then they're available on Saturday as well.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Just to, I'll just confirm a couple of things here. One, I do concur with Councillor Cooper that we need to get some equality into this, but that's unfortunately not what we're discussing right at this moment. And I would like to see that discussion happen. I do think that we need to get a stop to this however we can, because not only is Councillor Bochek right about the number of beds, but I have heard from a number of seasonal residents that, if we got sick and we bring our groceries and we go home to our hospital, that's really not the point. The point is that they could infect our population up here, which is primarily elderly. And that's more the case. It's not that they're going to use the facility, but if they infect people up here, and there's a great risk of that because of our aging population, then our hospitals become very stressed. So, I stand by my, what I have to say. I think whatever it takes to stop for a short period of time that may be necessary, then we should be doing whatever we can. And who knows, in 2-3 weeks, the curve could change and we could be open for business for cottage season. If we don't do something about it now, then there's just no way we're going to be ready for cottage season. So it would give us a chance if we had that ability to close. And there's nothing saying that we don't close them now and in 3 weeks reassess.
Councillor Jarvis.
I'm going to make a comment on behalf of my constituency, which is that they pay the same or more taxes than everybody else. And I know that's going to open up a whole new kettle of fish or can of worms or whatever. I won't stand on that for very long, because I think they fully understand the situation as it is right now. I will, though, echo Councillor Cooper's comments, and I agree with those entirely. I don't know how that gets policed. If the provincial government chooses to try and put on restrictions for everybody that's a seasonal resident throughout the province, that could be, well, I think that's just problematic for the province. I am torn on this one. I'm in full agreement with Councillor Bochek with regards and Councillor Douglas with regards to the impact this could have on other residents from the standpoint of transmitting the virus up into cottage country. On the other hand, I know and have talked to and have heard from enough residents that I don't think, albeit per Mayor Coutsier's comments about us trying to do things when we shouldn't be doing them and opening our cottages could be an issue. But most of the people I've talked to come up, they get to their cottage without much contact with other people. They bring everything with them and they stay put once they're there, just as people who are now at their seasonal residences in the Muskoka area or other areas are telling the province that's exactly what they're doing. So I'm having a hard time with this one. But again, I'll go back to Councillor Wianko's comments about seeing how the province comments on things come next week.
Councillor Hazelton.
Everybody said all the great things to say. I don't know what else I can say, except I think we do need to have a fruitful conversation about how we represent our community and lobby the provincial government. That's really nothing to do with this boat launch thing as of now, but I am not in favor of the township taking additional actions to further constrain things beyond what the province has already done. I think that we have enough government levels constraining things and providing direction. And we've had a long conversation here, which has resulted in lots of different opinions. But at the end of the day, I think that the need for doing additional constraining legislation is not going to benefit our community, and it's not going to, the lack of that legislation is not going to put our community at risk. So as far as I'm concerned, we do what Councillor Wianko said, which is wait for the government of Ontario to provide the next step direction.
Okay. If our clerk could confirm this for me, I believe if we take a vote, then the matter is settled how we vote, and therefore we can't revisit. Is that correct?
I feel like Jess wants to see, as long as there isn't new information, correct.
Hmm.
I feel like
CEO
Steve would like to say something.
Thank
Sorry?
you. Oh,
Yeah.
painful. First of all, I want to thank Councillor Wianko for introducing me to his cat during this meeting. I really appreciated that. But second of all, currently there is no motion on the table. There is no motion that was read.
Yes,
no motion has been moved or seconded or anything. So, and also the mayor, based on conversation that he's been hearing, has the ability just to state this matter has been deferred. We cannot make it, we don't have to make any decision whatsoever. So if you want to read the room and do a deferral until next week, or wait until an additional provincial announcement, you can do that without calling a vote, just to clarify. Sorry, that was probably very clerky of me.
No, that's fine. Because like Councillor Jarvis, I'm extremely torn. And I think that arguments made on either side were very well made. It's a very challenging situation. And I'm inclined to defer this because of the fact that there's too many compelling arguments on both sides. And I know that no matter what we decide, we will be criticized for it, regardless of what our arguments were in this discussion today. And I think perhaps we should defer. And when I'm saying, well, defer, I would like to say to our CAO and our clerk, I believe we should meet again next week. And if we could arrange something as soon as possible with this and other items on the agenda, I think that would be a good thing for all of us to do. Okay, I almost slipped again. CAO Gunby.
Thank you very much. So this is a good part as any to bring this up then. It's not really new business, but you mentioned having a meeting next week along with other items. So just to clarify for members of council, these items for staff needed direction as soon as possible. And it was brought to our attention that because it was a special meeting, council didn't have the opportunity to add any items that they feel needed attention immediately. So if over the weekend, I'm sure you will be getting more communications from your constituents over the long weekend regarding boat launches and many other things. So if we call a special meeting, we need to do so no later than 24 hours in advance. So if you want to email us any items and that you would like to see on an agenda, we could do that for you.
Okay, so let's do that, and then let's move on. We have a bylaw to pass or not with regards to appointing some bylaw officers, I believe. Or is that municipal law enforcement officers?
Yes, an MLEO.
Yes.
Yes.
So we want them to start earlier than they are supposed to because of the fire ban. We only have one bylaw officer currently. So these are our two students that we're going to have start earlier than their regular start date.
Okay.
Correct. I think the proposed date is April 18th, which is yet to be confirmed, but.
So I don't know if there's any discussion anybody wants to have, or should I just take the vote? I'm seeing, okay, Councillor Bocek.
I guess since Tony Van Dam is not in the picture anymore, Jessica, I'll direct this at you. Oh, there he is. Tony, these bylaw officers that are being brought on early, they're being brought on early for a specific reason. Obviously, you don't do this just because you have extra money in your budget. They're being brought on to enforce what at this early stage of the year? Because, and I'll just elaborate on that a bit. I think you're going to have some local people a little bit vigilante, let's say, about people coming up and camping, people coming up and launching boats, people up and doing what they're not supposed to do. And these bylaw officers are going to be put in a very precarious position of acting as police officers being brought up at this early time. So my question to you is, why are we bringing them on early if they're not here to enforce laws that are currently on the books, bylaws that are currently on the books, and they're going to be running into people wanting to camp at McCrae Lake and people wanting to camp on 6 Mile and everything else? Is that your reason for bringing them on?
So there's a number of reasons why we're bringing them on. Number one reason is that currently there's no bylaw action going on the weekends. Because our summer is arriving early, we're doing it. I can tell you that this week alone, we did what a normal months of bylaw enforcement is doing. So we're quite active on it. With the fire ban in place now the fire department's being called out. I want to try to eliminate as much exposure of the fire department so that they're there for the emergencies. So we can have the bylaw officers attend those burning complaints without the fire department being there, unless somebody becomes belligerent and we need to put their fire out, then we'll deal with that with those officers. The other issue is that the provincial police are currently our number one lead in enforcing the orders of the emergency stay. However, the bylaw enforcement officers have been tasked to assist the OPP. And if they can't respond to those calls, they're going to pass those calls to the municipal law enforcement officers. So in the southern part of the township, the Southern Georgian Bay Detachment has already advised us that they're looking to pass some of those instances off to us. We currently in the north end that's being patrolled by the Bracebridge OPP. They're content right now. They're not being over inundated with it. What our goal is so we're looking for them to start next Saturday. Then we've got our orientation and our training that we need to do with them. So that would be next weekend. And then the following weekend, we would actively have them out on the weekends patrolling. And for the most part, any of the enforcement that we're doing on the education is on the Emergency Act part of it is education. We're trying to do that. If we're going to get into that, there's fines going to be laid. We're working with the police for them to do it as much as they can so that we save the court time and we don't have to provide the prosecutors and all of that kind of stuff. So it's more of a precautionary. I can tell you this week alone, we've done a month's worth of calls this week alone. So it's a short week. We're not even including on Friday yet. So I can tell you that the Ministry of Natural Resources and the bylaw officers have been in contact at the OPP, and they're going into McCrae Lake this weekend to do a blitz in there for educational purposes to begin with. Because last weekend there was a number of campers in there having fires. So we're trying to be proactive and educational on this as well.
All right. I see no other hands. Moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved, the council adopts bylaw 2020-037, being a bylaw to appoint Laura Bosono and Michael Newfer as a municipal law enforcement officers for the Township of Georgian Bay. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's carried. Thank you.
Do they get
And-
weapons?
Sorry?
Do they get weapons for enforcement?
Their personality, perhaps.
No weapons involved here.
Be it resolved, the council adopts bylaw 2020-038, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the April 9, 2020 special council meeting. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Carried. Be it resolved, the council does now adjourn at 4:08 p.m. I think it's 4:08, isn't it? Yes, 4:08 p.m. until Tuesday, May 12th, 2020, or at the call of the chair. Well, it will be before then, but we'll just leave that in here now until we know what the next date is. All those in favor? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you, Karen and Jessica and whoever else was involved in putting this whole thing together.
Julie.
Now we know it works. Sorry?
Julie and Karen did this, so thank you very much, the two of you, for working on this, because I made a promise to councillors that this would work today, and I begged them not to make me break my promise.
Well, I think it worked.
Give credit to Julie.
Very well.
Good job, ladies.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
Easter weekend, and we will see you somehow, some way next week.
Yes. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.